Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about one of the most terrifying silent killers, stroke. According to the World Health Organization, over 15 million people suffer a stroke each year worldwide. In the United States alone, nearly 800,000 cases occur annually. But what's truly alarming isn't the number. It's the fact that many of these strokes could have been prevented if people had recognized the early warning signs their bodies were sending. No loud alarms, no clear warnings, just subtle signals. Easy to ignore, but potentially life-saving. Don't take your eyes off this video, because noticing just one early sign might save you or a loved one from paralysis, memory loss, or worse. This isn't a scare tactic. This is life-saving information. Let's get started.
I had to stop for a moment when I looked at Mr. Carter's test results. A 74-year-old man who walked his dog every morning, rarely ate junk food, and loved spending quiet evenings with his crossword puzzles. No smoking, no drinking, and his blood pressure was stable for the last 10 years. Yet here he was, lying in a hospital bed, barely able to speak after a stroke that hit him in the early hours of a Sunday morning. What made it even more painful was that we could have seen it coming if we had only paid attention to something so subtle, so quiet, that most doctors don't even include it in their checklist. Let me ask you this, sir, or madam. When was the last time you found yourself unexpectedly tired, like a heavy fog rolling through your brain, making it harder to speak focus or move with clarity? Have you ever brushed it off thinking it was just old age catching up to you? If you nodded yes, I urge you not as a storyteller, but as a doctor to listen closely. There's a particular symptom that often goes unnoticed before a stroke, and it doesn't appear on most hospital forms or checklists. It's not the numbness in your arm. It's not the slurred speech. It's something much more quiet, yet just as dangerous. Fatigue. Not the kind you feel after a long walk, but a deep, sudden wave of exhaustion, often paired with a feeling of confusion or disorientation. You might find yourself struggling to recall a word. You may feel unusually slow, like your brain is walking through wet cement. That my friend could be your body whispering a final warning. A recent study published by a neurological team in Finland observed more than 2,000 elderly individuals over 6 years. They found that in more than 22% of minor stroke cases, the first reported symptom was not physical paralysis or facial drooping, it was mental fatigue and temporary confusion. These signs lasted less than a day sometimes, just an hour or two. And because they were so short-lived, most people ignored them. I can't tell you how many patients, many of them kind, smart, diligent people like you, said to me later, I thought I was just tired. But tiredness, especially when it's uncharacteristic and paired with mental fog, is never just anything at this stage of life. Your body is trying to keep you alive, you just have to learn its language. I once treated a woman named Shirley, a retired librarian in her early 70s. Her daughter brought her in after noticing that Shirley had been staring at the microwave one morning, unsure of how to set the timer, a task she did every day for years. She wasn't in pain, she wasn't dizzy, but she said she felt oddly blank, as if her brain had dimmed like a light bulb flickering. That episode lasted all of 15 minutes. 2 days later, she suffered a minor stroke while shopping for groceries. It broke her confidence. She was once fiercely independent, but now she was scared to be alone. She told me, I feel like my body betrayed me. But the truth is, it tried to warn her. She just didn't know how to listen. There's nothing shameful in that. We've been taught to wait for the dramatic signs, the collapsed body, the slurred words, the dropped coffee cup. But the body doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. You might be thinking, Doctor, how can I tell the difference between a warning sign and just a bad day? And that's a valid question. The key is to pay attention to patterns. If you suddenly feel mentally foggy, emotionally flat, or deeply exhausted in a way that doesn't match your usual rhythm, especially if it comes out of nowhere, it's worth taking seriously. Not in a panicked way, but in a curious, respectful way. Track it. Note the time. Did it happen after waking before lunch? How long did it last? The American Stroke Association emphasizes that the earliest signs of a stroke can often include silent neurological changes, like short-term memory loss, language confusion, or an odd sense of detachment from reality. These are not senior moments. These are flashing red lights on the highway of your brain health. And here's the most important part. If you feel any of these changes even briefly, don't wait to see if it gets worse. Let someone know. Call your doctor. Talk to your family. You're not being paranoid, you're being wise. The quicker you respond, the greater the chance of reversing the damage or even preventing a stroke altogether. I'm here not just to inform you, but to protect you because I've seen what happens when these signals are ignored. I've seen strong men reduced to silence, vibrant women lose their spark, and I've seen their regret. But I've also seen what happens when someone listens, when someone says, something doesn't feel right and makes that call. That's the kind of courage that saves lives. And if this message resonates with you, or if you've experienced anything similar, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you've never felt this before, type 0, not to dismiss it, but to let us know where you stand. Never miss advice crafted specifically for your stage of life. Hit subscribe, enable notifications, and let's walk this journey of strength, clarity, and dignity together. Let me take you into a moment you might recognize. You wake up one morning and something just feels off. You aren't in pain. You can walk. You can speak. But it feels like you're wrapped in cotton. Your thoughts move slowly. Maybe your hand shakes slightly while pouring coffee, or maybe your words come out a little jumbled, but it all passes after a while. You tell yourself, I just didn't sleep well, or I'm probably just getting older. But something inside you knows this was different. As a doctor who's been working with elderly patients for over 20 years, I've heard this story more times than I can count. And every time my heart aches, because if more people recognize that something subtle like that could be an early sign of a brain under stress, we might prevent so much suffering. You see, strokes are not always explosive events. Sometimes they begin quietly with the tiniest shifts in your balance, your energy, your thoughts. And the symptom that goes overlooked the most by doctors and patients alike is mental fatigue. It's what I call the hidden door to a stroke, and it's not on most checklists. In many ways, that's because this kind of fatigue doesn't always seem serious. You might not feel sleepy, you may actually feel alert but foggy. It's like your brain is there, but not really. You forget names you've known for decades. You read a page and can't remember what it said. You try to speak, but you can't find the words. And then just like that, it clears. That's what makes it so deceptive. Let me tell you about a man named Douglas, 69 years old, an ex-mechanic who prided himself on never missing a day's work. He came to me one afternoon and said, "Doc, I think my brain's playing tricks on me. Yesterday I was trying to pay bills and I couldn't remember how to log into the bank. I've been doing it for years. Then 2 hours later I remembered everything again. What do you think that is?" I asked him a few more questions. No weakness, no headache, no drooping in the face. But I had a gut feeling. I referred him for a brain scan. What we saw confirmed it. He had suffered a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, which is like a mini stroke. The blood flow to part of his brain had been briefly blocked, then restored. It left no immediate physical damage. But it was a warning. And because he came in when he did, we were able to adjust his medication, put him on a gentle daily exercise plan, and make a few changes to his diet. That was 3 years ago. He hasn't had another incident since. These are the stories that don't make the headlines. They don't feel dramatic, but they are victories, and they are only possible when you learn to respect the quiet signs. According to the National Institutes of Health, elderly individuals who experience sudden unexplained fatigue combined with cognitive slowing are at significantly higher risk of cerebral small vessel disease, one of the silent causes of strokes. That condition doesn't show up like a heart attack. It builds quietly over time, often signaled by these subtle changes in mental clarity and alertness. The challenge is that many people, including trained doctors, are still looking for only the big 3 symptoms: facial drooping arm, weakness, and speech problems. And those are critical, yes. But the body doesn't always follow the textbook. Especially in older adults, the brain can send much softer messages. That's why I want you to become an expert in your own body, not in a medical sense, but in the sense of deep awareness. You don't need a degree for that. You just need to pause and listen. Is your energy different today? Are you confused in a way that doesn't feel normal? Are your thoughts sluggish like molasses in winter? These are not small things. They may feel small, but they matter. What I've found over the years is that people who recover well from strokes or avoid them altogether are not always the fittest or the youngest. They're often the ones who know themselves the best, who notice what feels off before it becomes dangerous. They're the ones who tell their spouse, "Something feels strange today," and make that phone call. You can do that too. You don't need to be afraid. You just need to be aware. Fatigue, especially sudden or strange fatigue, is not your enemy. It's your body's way of tapping you on the shoulder. The question is whether you're listening. And when you do listen, the actions don't have to be extreme. Sometimes it's just resting. Sometimes it's checking your blood pressure. Sometimes it's making that appointment. And sometimes, yes, it's going to the emergency room, even if you feel silly doing it. I would rather have you come in 10 times for nothing than miss the one time that matters. You deserve a life where your mind is clear, your energy is steady, and your body feels like a trusted friend, not a ticking clock. And the first step is not treatment, it's attention. There's a particular moment I'll never forget: a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the hospital halls feel calm for once. An elderly gentleman named Raymond, 76 years old, sat across from me. He looked perfectly composed, polished shoes, a neatly tucked shirt, and eyes that held decades of experience. But something in the way he moved was just a little delayed, subtle, like someone who's been awake too long. "Doctor," he said, "I think I'm just losing a step." Not physically. Up here. He tapped his temple gently. "Last week I was talking to my grandson, and halfway through my sentence, I forgot what I was saying. Then it happened again the next day. My wife says I seem spaced out, but I'm not sure if it's just age or something else." And that hesitation, that quiet uncertainty, is what saves lives. Raymond was lucky. What he was experiencing I recognized from a growing body of research that's been reshaping the way we view early stroke signs. According to an analysis from Johns Hopkins University, nearly 15% of stroke survivors reported mental changes like confusion attention problems or temporary memory lapses before any physical symptoms emerged. What's more, those with these early cognitive signals were twice as likely to experience another stroke within the year if they didn't receive prompt care. This is what I want to pass on to you, not to scare you, but to sharpen your awareness. Because the body doesn't lie. It might whisper. It might change slowly, but it always tells the truth. And when your brain starts slowing down in unfamiliar ways, even for a brief moment, it's worth a second look. Let me ask you this, sir, or madam, how many times have you blamed your mental fog on getting older without asking why it's happening at that moment? Not every slip of memory is a red flag, of course. We all forget things. But the kind of mental fatigue I'm talking about is different. It feels like your thoughts are walking through thick mud, like someone dimmed the lights inside your mind. It's not just forgetfulness, it's disconnection. That moment when you know something's off but can't quite put your finger on it. The World Health Organization recently published findings about aging populations and stroke risk, revealing that early neurological symptoms often go unreported, not because they're rare, but because they're subtle. Especially in elderly individuals, strokes can begin in the smallest blood vessels, creating microdamage long before anything dramatic happens. That damage shows up as confusion, slower responses, fatigue, and sometimes even personality changes. Have you ever found yourself feeling less like yourself? Maybe just for a morning, maybe for a few hours. Have you found words harder to find or felt distant from your own thoughts? These are not always signs of dementia or just the passage of time. Sometimes they are your brain struggling to get enough oxygen or blood flow. And if you act early, you can prevent something much worse. I remember a patient named June 71, retired teacher, lived alone, but walked every day and ate well. She came to me not because of pain, but because she felt like a different person over the last few weeks. Her energy was low. She said, "I'm not depressed, but it's like I don't recognize my own mind sometimes." That's the kind of insight I wish every patient had. Because when we did a scan, we found evidence of multiple small infarcts, tiny silent strokes that had gone unnoticed over time. One of them was very recent. We adjusted her medication, added blood thinners, and most importantly, built a plan that included simple brain exercises, daily hydration tracking, and gentle movement. She told me 2 months later, "I feel like I'm slowly coming back to myself." That's what I want for you to come back to yourself. You deserve to wake up and feel present in your own skin, to talk to your grandchildren with a sharp mind, to do your crossword puzzles and remember every clue, to walk into a room and not wonder what you came in for. That clarity isn't gone, it's waiting for you to protect it. And the first layer of protection is attention, not panic, not self-diagnosis, just honest, regular attention. If you have an off day, take note of it. If you feel mentally tired in a way that feels unfamiliar, tell someone. Ask a loved one to observe you. Often those around you will notice changes before you do, like in the case of Shirley or Raymond or June. That quiet moment where your spouse says, "You're not yourself today," could be your greatest ally. And one more thing, don't wait for dramatic symptoms to take action. Even if it's just a passing cloud, it's worth checking in. You wouldn't ignore smoke coming from your car, even if it's just a little. Your brain deserves the same respect. Stroke doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it starts with silence. And if you know what to look for, you can answer that silence with strength, with knowledge, and with choice. I want you to imagine something with me. You're sitting in your favorite chair, the one you always rest in after lunch. Maybe you've just finished your meal and everything feels fine. The afternoon sunlight is pouring in soft and golden, but then, in a strange, creeping way, you feel a wave of fog pass over you. Your limbs are heavy, not with sleep, but with something deeper. You try to stand up slowly, carefully, but your thoughts feel distant, like they're a few steps behind you. This moment might pass in 10 minutes, maybe even less. You shake it off, have a glass of water, and tell yourself it's just one of those days. But something inside you still feels unsettled, like a small bell was rung somewhere in your body. Not loud, but clear. That moment matters more than you think. As a health expert, I've come to believe that these quiet episodes are not coincidences. They are patterns. And your body is offering you a glimpse, a chance before something irreversible happens. But if you don't understand it, or worse, if you dismiss it, that window might close without warning. There was a study I once read published by neurologists who had tracked over 1,000 elderly patients in North America. They found that roughly 30% of stroke survivors had pre-stroke symptoms that were entirely dismissed as aging or fatigue. Most of them never sought help. Many of them had spoken to their families about feeling off but didn't want to be a burden. Please hear me when I say this. You are not a burden for speaking up about your health. You are a survivor in progress. And people like you who take those early signs seriously often have the best outcomes because they act while there's still time. I once cared for a man named Glenn. He was a widower, 82 years old, retired school bus driver. He loved morning walks and strong coffee, but one morning he called his daughter and said, "Sweetheart, something doesn't feel right. I'm not dizzy, not weak, but it's like my head's full of smoke." She insisted he go to the ER. A scan revealed a narrowing artery in his brain, not yet blocked, but close. Doctors were able to perform a minimally invasive procedure and reduce his risk by more than 70%. Glenn sent me a thank you card later with a note that said, "Sometimes it's not the pain that saves you, it's the voice you don't ignore." That story stayed with me because so many people ignore that voice. Let's go deeper for a moment and look at what might be happening inside your body during one of those cloudy episodes. Your brain is fed by a vast network of blood vessels. Imagine tiny rivers all working in perfect rhythm. But over time, those vessels can stiffen, narrow, or become blocked. When even a small part of your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, you feel it not always in dramatic ways, but in the smallest shifts. Your mood, your focus, your ability to recall simple things. This is what scientists call silent ischemia. It's like a whisper of a stroke, not enough to knock you down, but enough to weaken the ground beneath you. And here's something else that might surprise you: dehydration, poor sleep, and even skipping a meal can make these small symptoms worse. That's why the Mayo Clinic encourages elderly adults to track not only their medications, but also their hydration levels and sleep patterns. They've found that strokes tend to occur more frequently in the early morning hours, often when the body is slightly dehydrated and the blood is thicker. So what can you do about all this? First, trust what you feel. You've lived long enough to know when something's different. Even if others brush it off, you must not. Second, make it easy for yourself. Keep a notebook by your bedside. If you ever feel that fog, that deep tiredness or confusion, write it down. Note the time, how long it lasted, what you were doing before it started. If you prefer technology, use the voice recorder on your phone. Tell yourself what happened in your own words. Third, involve someone. Choose one person in your life who you can talk to openly, your spouse, your daughter, your neighbor, even a close friend. Ask them to check in with you when you feel off. 2 sets of eyes and ears are better than 1. And finally, set up a routine that makes you stronger, not just safer. Go for short walks. Stretch gently every morning. Drink water regularly, not just when you feel thirsty. And feed your brain what it needs. Foods rich in omega-3s like salmon and walnuts, blueberries, leafy greens, turmeric. These aren't miracle cures, but they help keep those little rivers in your brain flowing clearly. The point isn't to become a health fanatic. It's to live the life you already love with more clarity, more energy, more presence. Because the cost of ignoring your body's early warnings isn't just about stroke. It's about your freedom, your confidence, your connection to the world around you. And if you've ever woken up and felt like your mind was slipping away from you, even just for a minute, I want you to know it doesn't have to be that way. You can live with awareness instead of anxiety, with vigilance, not fear. And that starts with honoring the messages your body sends you, no matter how small they seem. I often think about what it means to age with grace, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. For many older adults, the fear of losing independence is stronger than the fear of illness itself. I've seen it in the eyes of my patients. They don't just worry about death, they worry about losing the ability to drive to remember their spouse's birthday, to follow a recipe to write a check. That fear runs deeper than most people realize. And strokes are thieves of independence. They don't just damage your body, they can take pieces of who you are, who you've built yourself to be. But the truth, and here's the part I want you to hold on to, is that many strokes can be prevented. And even the ones that do happen if caught early don't have to define your future. So let's talk about what you can actually do. Not complicated protocols, not exhausting routines, just a handful of real sustainable changes that strengthen the most powerful tool you own, your brain. First move. I know you've heard this before, but let me say it in a new way. When you move your body, you are literally pushing blood toward your brain. You are feeding it, nourishing it. And no, you don't need to join a gym. You don't need fancy equipment. One of my patients, Marilyn, 84, arthritis in both knees, started simply walking to the mailbox and back twice a day. That was it. 2 months later, her blood pressure dropped 12 points. Her mental alertness improved so noticeably that her son asked her if she was on new medication. What changed wasn't her prescription. It was her oxygen flow, her consistency. Second, protect your sleep like it's medicine. Because it is. I once read an article from the National Institutes of Health that said sleep deprivation can trigger a cascade of events in the brain, raising stroke risk dramatically. Lack of sleep increases inflammation, impairs blood vessel function, and disrupts the very rhythm your brain needs to repair itself overnight. If you're someone who wakes up frequently or who struggles to fall asleep, try establishing a ritual. Not just a bedtime ritual, a warm bath followed by a magnesium supplement, soft music, dim lighting, a short prayer, or a few words in a gratitude journal. Your body loves rhythm, and your brain loves predictability. Third, stay curious. This might surprise you, but one of the most effective ways to reduce stroke risk is to keep learning. Cognitive stimulation. Learning a new skill, reading deeply, even watching educational documentaries increases the brain's plasticity. It keeps the neural pathways flexible and responsive. Dr. Elena Foster, a neuroscientist in San Francisco, has studied this for over a decade. Her conclusion: older adults who engage in regular intentional learning reduce their risk of cognitive decline by up to 45%. So yes, sir, or madam, that jigsaw puzzle matters. That gardening podcast you enjoy matters. That effort to write a letter by hand instead of sending a text, it matters. Because you're exercising more than your fingers. You're exercising your future. Fourth, eat with intention. This isn't about restriction. This is about nourishment. Your brain needs healthy fats to maintain its lining antioxidants, to reduce inflammation and steady blood sugar to maintain focus. avocados, olive oil, flaxseed, leafy greens, dark berries. These are gifts you can give yourself every single day. One of my patients, Richard, came to me after a mini stroke. He was overweight, tired, and felt overwhelmed by all the changes people were telling him to make. So we started with breakfast. Just breakfast. He swapped out his toast and jam for a boiled egg spinach and a spoon of chia seeds and Greek yogurt. 3 weeks later, his energy had doubled. And more importantly, his confidence came back. When he saw the change in himself, the motivation to keep going wasn't forced. It was natural. This is what I want for you. Not a life of fear, but a life of steady empowerment. And lastly, listen. Listen to your body and listen to your spirit. You know when something isn't right. You've lived through joy and heartbreak, through pain and healing. You know what's real. So when your body gives you a signal, don't rationalize it away. Don't wait until it turns into something bigger. Say something. Ask for help. You are not being dramatic. You are being wise. Health after 60, after 70, even after 80, it's not about perfection. It's about preservation. It's about honoring the years you've earned by taking steps that make the next ones even better. Because it's not just about living longer. It's about being present for the years you've already been given. Talk to someone today. Reflect. Think back. Have you had moments of unexplained mental fatigue, emotional detachment, strange tiredness that seemed to come out of nowhere? If you have, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it in the comments. Not just for me, but for others in our community who may be feeling the same way. And if you've never felt it, type 0. Let us know where you stand. This is how we create strength together. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Turn on notifications. Because the conversations we're having here, they matter. They might even save a life. Love your body not out of fear, but because it has carried you through so much already. Because it still has more to give.